Before electricity, before petroleum, before the industrial oils that now fill nearly every kitchen on earth, there was fat, not the soft, pale substance modern people fear, not the industrial product refined in factories, but pure, rendered animal fat, solid, stable, and essential. For thousands of years, it lit homes, cooked meals, protected skin, sealed leather, and washed bodies. It was molded into candles. It was carried by soldiers as both food and fuel. Its name is simple: tallow. In an age that has spent decades teaching us to fear animal fat, tallow has quietly returned, not as nostalgia, as memory. This is the story of the fat that once stood at the center of daily life, and the long process by which it was nearly erased. Tallow begins with sweat, the hard white fat that surrounds the kidneys and loins of cattle and sheep. When this fat is gently heated, the pure lipid separates from connective tissue, moisture, and impurities. What remains is a clean, shelf-stable fat that can last for months or even years without refrigeration if properly rendered and stored. The process is ancient and almost unchanged. Chop the fat, place it in a pot over low heat, allow it to melt slowly, strain, cool. The result is tallow. Unlike butter, it does not spoil quickly. Unlike many plant oils, it does not break down easily under high heat. Its smoke point typically sits between 400 and 420 degrees Fahrenheit, high enough for frying, roasting, and searing without producing the harsh compounds that form when more fragile oils begin to burn. Chemically, tallow is rich in saturated and monounsaturated fats, primarily palmitic, stearic, and oleic acids. This composition makes it solid at room temperature and unusually stable when heated. From the earliest recorded civilizations, people recognized these qualities. They did not need laboratory analysis. They simply observed that this fat lasted, cooked cleanly, and served more purposes than almost any other substance they possessed. Long before the rise of Rome, the peoples of Mesopotamia understood the value of rendered fat. In Sumer and Babylon, as early as the 3rd millennium before Christ, animal fat was combined with wood ash to produce one of the earliest known cleansing substances. Clay tablets describe the process. Fats boiled with ashes. The resulting mixture removed grease from wool and cloth so that the fibers could be dyed. It was not yet refined soap as we know it, but the principle, the reaction between fat and alkali, was already understood. In the world of the Hebrew Bible, fat carried a different kind of significance. The book of Leviticus is precise. Certain fat, the hard fat covering the entrails, the fat around the kidneys, the lobe of the liver, was not to be eaten by the people. It belonged to the Lord. It was burned on the altar as part of the peace offerings and other sacrifices. All fat is the Lord's, the text declares. It shall be a statute forever that you eat neither fat nor blood. This prohibited fat, known as shelev or heleb, is the very material most often rendered into high-quality tallow. The distinction is important. Not every bit of fat on an animal was forbidden. The marbling within the muscle and the softer fat attached to the meat could be consumed, but the dense, pure internal fat was set apart. In practical terms, this meant that when an animal was slaughtered according to the law, a significant portion of its richest fat was either offered or available for non-food uses. Lighting, sealing, or other purposes. Olive oil was the primary fuel for lamps in the land of Israel. Yet across the wider ancient Near East, animal fat remained a common and reliable source of light and heat. Nothing of value was wasted. The same animal that provided meat also provided fat that could cook the next meal, protect the skin, or burn through the night. By the time of the Greeks and Romans, tallow had become thoroughly woven into ordinary life. The Romans called rendered animal fat sebum. They used it for cooking. They burned it in lamps. They carried hardened cakes of it on long journeys as both ration and fuel. Soldiers greased weapons and leather with it. Travelers protected their skin against wind and cold with simple balms made from it. In the colder provinces of the empire, where olive oil was expensive or scarce, tallow filled the gap. It was more stable than butter. It did not turn rancid as quickly as many softer fats, and it could be produced wherever cattle or sheep were raised. Soap making continued as well. In Gaul and Britain, animal fat mixed with ash produced a coarse but effective cleansing paste. The principle remained the same as it had been in Babylon centuries earlier. Across the Mediterranean world, the same material served multiple masters: the cook, the soldier, the traveler, the priest, and the householder who simply needed light after sunset. Tallow's usefulness did not end with cooking and light. It was molded into candles that burned longer and more steadily than many early alternatives. Before paraffin and beeswax became widely available, tallow candles lit homes, churches, and workshops across Europe and beyond. It was whipped into balms that protected skin from harsh weather and healed minor wounds. Because its fatty acid profile is surprisingly close to that of human sebum, the skin accepts it readily. Ancient peoples did not know the chemistry. They simply knew that the fat soothed and shielded. It waterproofed leather. It greased tools and axles. It sealed containers. In times of scarcity, it could even be eaten as emergency calories, dense, portable energy. In every culture that raised cattle or sheep, the pattern repeated: kill the animal, use the meat, render the fat, waste almost nothing. This was not ideology. It was survival refined into habit. The modern world did not reject tallow overnight. The change came gradually, then suddenly. In the 19th and 20th centuries, new industries rose. Petroleum products offered cheap candles and lubricants. Chemical refining produced vegetable oils in industrial quantities. Hydrogenated fats promised longer shelf life and lower cost. Public health campaigns began to single out saturated fat as a primary villain in heart disease. Seed oils, extracted from soy, corn, canola, cottonseed, and others, flooded the market. They were inexpensive. They were liquid at room temperature. They were easy to bottle and ship. Tallow, by comparison, seemed old-fashioned, solid, animal, linked in the public mind to an earlier, less scientific age. By the late 20th century, many people had never seen pure rendered tallow. Restaurants that once fried in animal fat switched to industrial oils. Home cooks followed. The knowledge of how to render fat at home faded in a single generation. What had been a household staple became a specialty product, if it was available at all. In recent years, something unexpected has happened. Cooks and eaters began asking hard questions about the oils that replace tallow. Many of those oils are highly processed. They are rich in polyunsaturated fats that oxidize more readily under heat. They were never traditional cooking fats in most of the cultures that now consume them in large quantities. At the same time, a quieter interest in traditional animal fats has grown. Grass-fed and pasture-raised tallow has reappeared in small batches. People have rediscovered its high smoke point, its neutral flavor when pure, and its remarkable stability. In skincare, pure tallow balms have found a new audience. The same qualities that made it useful for protecting skin against wind and cold centuries ago. Its fatty acid profile is remarkably close to the oils produced by human skin itself. It absorbs cleanly. It does not require a long list of synthetic additives to remain stable. People who use it often describe a simple result. Skin that feels protected rather than coated. Still apply. None of this requires romanticizing the past. Modern food safety, refrigeration, and selective breeding have improved the quality and consistency of animal products. What has returned is not superstition. It is a recognition that some older materials solved practical problems with elegance and efficiency. Tallow does not need to be declared superior to every other fat. It only needs to be understood for what it is, a dense, stable, multi-purpose lipid that human beings relied upon for thousands of years because it worked. In recent years, something unexpected has happened. After decades of being pushed to the margins, pure animal fats have begun to return, not as a fashion, not as a trend driven by social media, but as a quiet recognition that something essential was lost. To understand why this return matters, we must look honestly at what replaced it. In the 19th century, a French chemist named Hippolyte Maurice responded to a challenge from the government. The French Navy needed a cheap, stable substitute for butter that would not spoil on long voyages. His solution was the first margarine. Interestingly, the earliest versions still relied on animal fat, rendered beef tallow mixed with milk. It was an attempt to imitate butter using the very material we have been discussing. But the story did not end there. As industrial chemistry advanced, the animal fat was gradually removed. Chemists learned to take liquid vegetable oils, oils that had never been traditional cooking fats in most cultures, and force them into a solid state through hydrogenation. What began as a wartime or economic substitute became a mass-produced industrial product. Margarine moved from a tallow-based invention to a product built almost entirely on seed oils. By the 20th century, the shift was complete. Seed oils extracted from soybeans, corn, cottonseed, canola, other crops flooded the market. They were cheap. They were abundant. They could be refined, bleached, deodorized, and hydrogenated on a massive scale. Public health messaging began to single out saturated animal fats as dangerous while promoting these new industrial oils as modern and healthy. The result was a profound change in the human diet. For the first time in history, large populations began consuming high quantities of polyunsaturated oils that oxidize readily when heated. These oils are unstable under the very conditions most people use them: frying, sautéing, and high heat cooking. When they break down, they form compounds that were never part of traditional food systems. Tallow, by contrast, remains solid at room temperature and remarkably stable under heat. Its smoke point sits high enough for most cooking methods. It does not require chemical hydrogenation to remain usable. It does not need to be extracted with solvents or stripped of its natural character through industrial refining. The contrast is not merely technical, it is historical. Hold a piece of pure tallow in your hand, and you are holding a technology older than most of the tools we consider modern. It is the fat that burned in lamps before electricity, the fat that cooked meals before industrial oils existed, the fat that protected skin, sealed leather, and greased tools when petroleum products had not yet been invented. In the biblical world, certain fats were set apart as belonging to God. In the Roman world, rendered fat sustained soldiers and households. In ordinary villages across continents and centuries, it was simply part of the daily economy of survival. Nothing was wasted. The animal that provided meat also provided fat that could cook the next meal, light the night, and protect the body. We do not have to return to every practice of the past. No serious person argues that we should abandon refrigeration, modern hygiene, or scientific understanding. But we do well to remember what was once obvious, that fat from healthy animals carefully rendered is not an enemy. It is a resource. The industrial oils that replaced it were never neutral. They were the product of specific economic and chemical decisions that prioritized shelf life, cost, and mass production over stability and tradition. Margarine began as an attempt to imitate butter. It ended as a vehicle for seed oils. Those oils, in turn, became the default cooking medium for much of the modern world. Tallow is not a trend. It is a recovery of knowledge, a recovery of material, a recovery of a relationship to the animal and to the land that produced it. In an age of refined, unstable, and highly processed oils, the oldest fat is once again being noticed, quietly, steadily, without slogans or marketing campaigns. People are simply returning to something that worked for a very long time, because it still does. The fat they tried to erase never fully disappeared. It waited, and now it is being seen again for what it always was.